Good night, hey everyone. Tonight, God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Irma J. I'm here to give you a word on tonight. And the topic gonna be Jesus had to go through it. He had to go through it. Whew. Including myself and Joe and anybody else had to go through a storm. Sometimes we think we can just say, God, please take it away. I know I prayed many times, and we're gonna see here that Jesus prayed 3 times to take the cup away. A lot of time we'll pray and say, please take this storm away. But God not gonna take it away because we have to go through it. We have to go through it. Because Jesus suffered so much pain, so that's why we have to go through trials and tribulation. So Jesus had to go through so much pain and suffering before he left this earth. So that's what the trials and tribulation come at with us. We can't go around it. We have to go through the trials and tribulation. We got to go through the pain, the suffering. So now Jesus came down on earth without sin. He came down here without sin. Because, he had to save us for our sin. So and place in Mary, who was a virgin. So, God had to place him in somebody who haven't sinned either, so she was a virgin. So Jesus had to suffer because suffering is part of sacrifices, and Jesus was the lamb. Now you remember in the Old Testament, every time they sinned, they had to cut animals and lambs and sheep and all this kind of stuff, for forgiveness. So that's why God had talked to Abraham and told him when they was having that discussion about Abraham testing Abraham with his son, because God knew he was going to sacrifice his son. He saw how big Abraham's faith was that he took his only son up there to be sacrificed. So God had told him, sooner or later, you won't have to sacrifice these animals, because I will have someone that will come down and be the sacrifice. So Jesus knew his purpose, that he will have to suffer and endure so much pain. Jesus willingly um, paid the price for our sin. you know. So he could have refused the cup, but he didn't. He willingly, when they talked to discuss about it, he said he was willing to do it. He could have refused the cup, but he didn't. In order to do his will for God. You know, he another one. He don't break promises. If he told God he gonna do it, he gonna do it. But even though he got close to his time, he got nervous. Anybody get nervous? He putting himself up there to be sacrificed. So he stopped praying. He prayed to God 3 times to take this cup away. I did it also myself. So when and a lot of time I feel like I'm carrying Jesus' cross because my pain will never compare to Jesus' pain. But sometimes we get to that point we feel like all the pain that Jesus went through. So the suffering of Christ was God's plan for the salvation of the world. So when God have a plan, when God, because God talked about that to Abraham, that way in the Old Testament. So God always have a plan for someone. Just like he told someone about Moses was coming to rescue the Israelite. Moses wasn't even born yet. So God always have a plan. He'll write your whole plan out from the beginning to the end. So Jesus' pain and suffering was so extreme that he had to endure. But at times we may feel that we sharing his pain too sometimes. Because I know many days I feel like I feel like I'm feeling some of Jesus' pain. Because I'm going through so much pain and suffering. It's like the battle will not come to an end. So Jesus' pain and suffering was so extreme that he had to endure, but at times we may feel as though we sharing his pain. So it's getting close to Jesus' crucifixion that he stepped away to pray, and now Jesus tried to take this cup away. So it's getting close to the time. Which I don't blame him. We all get nervous when, he volunteered to do this, but it's getting close to the time. So now Jesus will pray to God 3 times to remove this cup. You know, the first time he said, Father, if it's possible, take this cup from me. Not as I will, but as you will. So he started getting close to the time. And he already saw his death. So a lot of time if you see your death, a lot of time you're gonna get scared. So said too, Jesus prayed the second time, take this cup away. So Jesus prayed the third time, take this cup away. So I guess God got quiet. So that's when Jesus realized, okay, you quiet, the purpose must be fulfilled. So he know he know he have a purpose. He know that purpose has to be fulfilled. You know, so Jesus' life is taken freely, given by him for the sake of those who will inherit the eternal life in his name. So he know he doing this for everybody. But he got a little nervous and got a little scared, and getting close to the time. So we see Jesus prayed to God 3 times to remove this cup. So Jesus was set here to save us from sin, and experience the pain and the suffering, the betrayal and the lies on earth. He experienced all that, rejection, all that. But he had to go through it. He had to go through this process, to fulfill his purpose. You know, you have to go through it. I asked to take the cup away from me many times, my own self, but I have to keep going through the process. It's a process, and God have his own plan in place from before we even was born. He have a plan. He have everything set. He always have your enemies in part of your plan too. God have everything set. He's a well organized God. He know exactly what he doing. He know exactly what he want and how he want. So Jesus already he know he about to endure so much pain and suffering right now, but God did not respond. So he had to go through it to fulfill his purpose. So sometimes when you have a purpose on your life, you know, it's a pain and suffering to endure. You have to go through that process to fulfill it. It's a process to follow through. And Jesus had to follow through. He had to follow through. And me too. So when it was for them to arrest Jesus, his disciples, Peter cut the servant ear. Jesus said no. Jesus said no, stop. The scriptures must be fulfilled. It must happen in this way. So he know all this have to happen in this way. He have to go through. He have to go through it, through the process. This man went through all the process. He went through all the process. He fixed that man ear. He said, "Oh no, this is script that it must happen in this way." So he had to go through all to pain and suffering because it was a process he had to go through. So there was on Jesus. There was Jesus. They came to pick up Jesus. So they couldn't find nothing on Jesus. So they had to make up false evidence against him. And that's how the devil is. Devil has to find something on you if they don't have anything on you. But it was all part of the script. He had to go along with it. So God write the script of the plan from the beginning to the end. So God knew all what Jesus was gonna have to endure. God knew because he writes everything down. He know what Jesus had to go through. He had to go through it. We have another situation where it all part of God's plan also. So Jesus go before Pilate. Jesus and Pilate hang. I mean, he have probably have life and death in his hand. You know, he had to decide what he gonna do with Jesus. You know, so Jesus' life is in his hand. You know, so now Pilate couldn't find anything on Jesus. You know, because Pilate couldn't find nothing on Jesus. You know, so Pilate couldn't let him. Pilate could have let him go. That's what I'm saying. Pilate had Jesus in the palm of his hand, life and death. You know, it was his decision to keep him, you know, to be crucified or either let him go. Now, Pilate could have let him go, you know, but Pilate turned him over to Bartholomew. And Bartholomew was the one who wanted to crucify Jesus. You know, only if Pilate would have just released him. You know, release him out of the street, let him go home. But you know what? He couldn't do that. That was part of his plan, part of his purpose that he had to go through it. You know, so Pilate had to do it in that way. You know, it must have to been done that way. You know, so he had to release him to Bartimaeus for Jesus' purpose to be fulfilled. You know, so now we see that Pilate could have let Jesus go. You know, could have just let Jesus go home. But we all know that was part of God's plan. You know, so he had to turn him over to the other king for Jesus to be crucified to fulfill his purpose. You know, so now we see that Jesus endured so much pain, suffering on this earth. So that's why we on this earth. We got to suffer so much pain. You know, because this man didn't suffer that pain just to be suffering. He did it for us. You know, he volunteered to save all of us. You know, so he had to go through it all. One, first he had prayed to God. It getting close to his time now. So he getting nervous. So he had to pray to God to remove this cup. You know, and he prayed to God 3 times to remove this cup. God did not answer. So then he realized, you know, it's my purpose. I must just go through it. You know, so 2, the disciples cut the servant out, and Jesus said, no, it must happen in this way. You know, so 3, Pilate had Jesus' life in his hand. Pilate let Jesus go to Baltimore to be crucified. You know, so when Pilate could have let him go, but he would have messed God's plan up. So it had to been done in this way. You know, because God, Jesus already knew he had to be sacrificed. You know, so the plan had to go in that way. You know, so now Jesus on the cross, he cried out in a loud voice to my God. So why have you forsaken me? You know, she asked God, why he had forsaken me? You know, because I guess God never answered or responded to him. Now Jesus cried out the second time, and he gave up his spirit, and he died. You know, so Jesus had died for all our sins, but he arose 3 days later. You know, he arose 3 days later. Jesus experienced so much suffering and pain, betrayed, rejection, and denial, and lies. He experienced all that. You know, he experienced all that. You know, but all that pain and suffering, he had to go through it. It had to happen in that way. You know, he had to go through it. It was part of his purpose. It was fulfilled. Jesus did everything he was supposed to do on this earth, and it all was fulfilled. You know, that's why God allowed us to suffer and experience so much pain and suffering on this earth. You know, he sent his only forgotten son. He sent his only forgotten son down here to save us for our sins. You know, and he had to go through so much to do that in the process. You know, so that's why we have to experience so much pain and suffering. You know, and a lot of time, you know, God is right there. God know when to step in. When we done had so much pain and suffering, you know, because we have to endure it, you know, to go in heaven. We cannot, you know, Jesus went back in heaven. had experienced so much pain and suffering. So we can't enter heaven unless we experience so much pain and suffering. So he had to go through it. It was part of his purpose, and it was fulfilled. That's why God allowed us to suffer so much pain due to um, his son Jesus. You know, and in my stone, I feel like I had carried that cross. You know, the pain feel like it will never go away. You know, but I have to keep going through it. Part of my purpose. Part of my plan, God plan. So I have to go through it. I have to go through it. Many days I said, take the cup away. Please take this cup away. You know, and see, he ain't gonna answer you because you got to go through it. You got to go through it. Sometimes you be thinking about running like Jonah. Make sure you don't run where they got no water anchor. He got caught in the fish. No matter how fast we caught ourselves running from God, God can catch us. You could be running fast and fast, all out of breath. God will be right there. He'll be ahead of you, or behind you, on side of you. You cannot run from him. Jonah gonna run from God and run right on the boat. Like that was gonna help him. So now we have another person that went through so much pain and suffering, and he did not give up. He went through it. He went through his trials, and he never gave up. We talking about Job. So Job went through it. Remember Job and his storm. He also experienced so much pain and suffering. Where his friends could not recognize him. That's why in my storm, I still be trying to keep up with myself, because you don't want to look like, you're going through the storm. You have to still keep up with yourself at the same time, But Joe wasn't keeping up with himself because his friends came, they couldn't even recognize him. Even the wife had to say something that he was just looking so bad, But in the mix of all that, Joe was still holding on. Joe was still trying to go through it. Even the devil got mad because Joe was still standing and put his socket out. But Joe still was holding on, still was holding on. He still was going through the process after he done lost his kids, he done lost his animals, he just had lost everything. And Joe was still holding on, going through the process, you know. And he did not get mad with God. He the only one going through that, not mumbling. He said one thing of why he going through it. But other than that, he did not curse God. He did not get mad with God. He got mad with God probably for a little while because he was like, why he going through it? Why is you allowing me to go through it? We all say that. I said the same thing. We all, when that pain is so severe, you saw yelling out. So the devil wanted Joe to throw in a towel and curse God. But Joe went through it. Joe lost everything. He lost everything. Joe was rich and he was blessed. But the devil hadn't did a number on him because the devil had a conversation with God. And a lot of times God will allow you to go through certain pains and suffering because he'll test your faith in your stone. And so just like a lot of people be saying, well, you in your stone because you made a wrong decision or you in a sin or something like that. But Joe went through so much pain and suffering. Joe didn't do anything. That's what we kept on asking what he did. Joe didn't do anything. It's the devil had chose Joe to go through it. And why, the devil had to get permission from God. And what God did, God will step back because it's his time to test your faith in this stone. And that's what he do. He tests your faith while you in this stone. Because every time we in our stone, trust me, God is right there watching. God get his glory over our stone. God work better in our weakness. So when we going through that storm and we in so much pain and suffering, we weaken ourselves. The devil tried to weaken us. Try to weaken us to throw in the towel and quit. But Job refused. Job refused and I refused. We're gonna cry. We're gonna lash out. But we're gonna keep on holding on. You know, we're gonna keep on holding on. So Job had to go through it. He had to go through the process. Even though he didn't look like himself. Even the wife got frustrated and said, "Well, won't you crazy, God, and just die because you don't look right." I did the story on Joe White too. So Joe went through it, and it was all worth at the end because he got double back to what he lost. And also Jesus died, but Jesus rose back up on the third day. So it was all worth it too because he's still alive. He left his spirit. So he left the body, but his spirit still live. So his journey is still work out better at the end. Joe still work out better at the end, and I'm still in the mix of mine. So in the mix of your storm, you got a certain stuff you had to endure, and you just have to go through it. You gonna cry. Many times I cry and say, "Take the storm away from me. I want this storm to be over with," but it's not our church. God don't move when we say move. God move when He ready to move. Because God do everything on His time, His own limit. So He don't move when we say move. He pull us out when He say pull out. But we gonna keep crying it. But and certain things like the devil wanted Joe to throw in the towel. He wanted Joe to curse God. But Joe never give up. In the mix of his storm, God was testing his faith. So in our pain and suffering, God are watching us. God is near us. He near us while we're going through our storm. He was near. Joe had to realize God is right there watching over Joe. Because see, you remember God had told the devil, "You do whatever you want, but you cannot take his life." So God already was watching over Joe to make sure the devil don't do the opposite of what God told him not to do. So we going through our trials. In the mix of our storm, God is right there watching over us. He making sure the devil don't do nothing more than what he set out to do. So Jesus, his whole journey, he kept saying God was inside of him. He said he was one, so he already had God right there watching over him. And Job realized that God was watching over him. So God is always near us in our dark valley, going through our storm. So Jesus went through the pain and suffering. Job went through the pain and suffering, and myself still in the storm going through the pain and suffering. But do it all. Certain things in your purpose you have to go through. Job had no purpose, but the devil chose him to put him through a trial. So we have to go through it. You have to go through it. Now we all can go through our pain and suffering because we have to go through our pain and suffering because Jesus did. Jesus did. That's why we got to suffer so much pain and so much suffering. Now we all have to go through our trials and tribulation. No way around it. Jesus tried to go away around. He asked God 3 times to take this cup away. And no response because God wanted him to go through it. His purpose was already written out before he came down. Everything was written out. So Jesus died for all our sin. He had to go through all that pain and suffering. So we gonna always love Jesus. We gonna always praise Jesus because he did what he did for all of us. So we always gonna praise Jesus. We're not gonna wait for Thanksgiving. We're not gonna wait for Christmas and Easter. We're gonna praise Jesus all the time. We're gonna love Jesus all the time. His man took so much beating and sacrificing his whole self for us. So um and Joe went through it. Joe went through it while his friend come and recognize him. They came by him and they And there was silence for like 2 weeks. Just sitting there looking at Joe. They didn't know what to say. Because he was going through so much. That's why I try to keep up with myself. Because you don't want to look like hell, looking like, been through a storm, so you want to still take care of yourself while you're in your storm, because you don't want to meet up with somebody, oh, Lord, what's going on? Like they did Joe, so we have to go through it. Don't want to go through it, you know, we want it to go away, you know, but God said no, we have to go through it, you know. I'm like Jesus, I ain't for that cup to be removed so many times. I even thought about running like Jonah did, but you can't run. He can't run. Jonah know that now. He couldn't run. He got caught. You got to go through it. I mean, sometimes the pain be so severe that you just want to run from the storm, but you can't run from your storm. If God got a purpose on your life, you got to do it. And there's certain stuff that you got to go through the process. And sometimes the process take pain and suffering. So I hope y'all enjoy this package. And I hope y'all have a blessed and safe night. And always remember, you don't have to be a purpose. Job wasn't on no purpose. Sometimes the devil will pick you. Sometimes the devil will pick you to where you die. But you got to keep on standing on God's word. You cannot give up. Because remember, God gonna always testing your faith in your trials. So if you're going through so much pain, and you think God is quiet, trust me, He right there watching over you. He watching over you. So always remember, through your pain and suffering, God is right there. Because Job went through so much, then he had to realize, I'm always praying to God. So he didn't understand what was going on. So you always a praying person, love God and love Jesus, and you go through your trial. Sometimes, Joe had to really step back and try to figure things out. And that's when he realized, I pray to God every day. So I know God is watching over me. And that's how Joe had to look at it. And when Joe realized that God was testing his faith, and that he realized that God was near him, then God restored everything back to him. And he got more than what the devil took from him. So we all have to remember, we have to go through different trials. We don't want to do it. It's just, if we feel like we carry Jesus cross, but God tests your faith. God test your faith. So I hope y'all have a blessed and safe night. And I see you on the next video.